Chapter 17. Grant Comes East. The upcoming 1864 presidential election is as important for the Confederacy as it is for Lincoln. With resources and manpower running thin, the best chance for Confederate independence may lie in the defeat of Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln's prospects for re-election are directly related to battlefield success. To bring that success to the Eastern Theater, Lincoln brings Grant from the West after he saves the day for a trapped Union army at Nashville. Grant leaves his Army of the Tennessee in the hands of William T. Sherman. The Northern public expects Grant and Sherman to immediately conquer the South and end the war. However, Lee is still in command in the East, and Sherman has a long way to go to reach Atlanta. March 10th, 1864.
President Lincoln today officially promoted Major General Ulysses S. Grant to the rank of Lieutenant General of the U.S. Army. The rank of Lieutenant General was last used in 1798 when President John Adams assigned the post to former President George Washington in anticipation of a possible French invasion of the United States. General Grant has distinguished himself from the beginning of the war by methodically capturing rebel forts and cities along the Mississippi River Valley, then capturing the Confederate citadel of Vicksburg in July of last year. When Union forces were surrounded at Chattanooga in September, Lincoln gave Grant control of all Union armies in the West. After a 60-mile trip over land in which soldiers at times had to carry him when he was unable to walk those stretches, he arrived in Chattanooga soaked to the skin on the evening of October 23rd. He first reopened a supply line to the beleaguered Union Army, then captured Lookout Mountain on November 24th, before directing his forces to a stunning victory at Missionary Ridge the next day. When news of the victory reached the Northern public, General Ulysses S. Grant became an instant celebrity, and for some, a possible candidate for the Republican nomination. Jackie Chase picks up the story from there.
Carter, it is General Grant's immense popularity that gave the president pause in promoting him. When General Grant rode to the rescue at Chattanooga, rumors surfaced that many Northern senators were considering nominating Grant instead of Lincoln at the 1864 Republican National Convention. It was only after General Grant issued a statement that he was not interested in any political candidacy did the president agree to promote Grant to the revived rank of Lieutenant General of the U.S. Army. On the evening of March 8th, the President and Mrs. Lincoln gave a public reception at the White House. At about 9:30, a sudden commotion near the entrance to the room attracted attention as General Grant walked along modestly with the rest of the crowd toward Mr. Lincoln. With a face radiant with delight, the President advanced rapidly toward his distinguished visitor. Grant's right hand grasped the lapel of his coat, his head bent slightly forward and his eyes upturned toward Lincoln's face. The president, 8 inches taller, looked down with beaming countenance upon his guest.
The nation's appreciation of what you have done and its reliance upon you for what remains to do in the existing great struggle are now presented with this commission, constituting you Lieutenant General in the Army of the United States.
April 12th, 1864.
Carter, we have just received word of a terrible massacre of colored Union soldiers at Fort Pillow on the Tennessee bank of the Mississippi, 40 miles north of Memphis. Some 3,000 rebels under the command of Nathan Bedford Forrest stormed the fort held by a garrison of 600 Federal soldiers, roughly evenly divided between United States colored artillery regiments and white Unionists from East Tennessee. When the rebels scaled the walls, Union soldiers ran for the bluffs and the river, but Confederate soldiers cut them off. A Northern surgeon watched helplessly as the rebels lined up Federals for execution and hacked and shot the wounded. A witness described the river as, quote, dyed with the blood of the slaughtered for 200 yards, end quote.
April 18th, 1864.
When the war began 3 years ago, neither party nor any man expected it would last till now. Each looked for the end, in some way, long ere today. Neither did any anticipate that domestic slavery would be much affected by the war. But here we are. The war has not ended, and slavery has been much affected. How much needs not now to be recounted? So true is it that man proposes and God disposes. A painful rumor, true I fear, has reached us of the massacre by the rebel forces at Fort Pillow in the west end of Tennessee on the Mississippi River of some 300 colored soldiers and white officers who had just been overpowered by their assailants. There seems to be some anxiety in the public mind whether the government is doing its duty to the colored soldier and to the service at this point. At the beginning of the war, and for some time, the use of colored troops was not contemplated. And how the change of purpose was wrought, I will not now take time to explain. Upon a clear conviction of duty, I resolved to turn that element of strength to account. And I am responsible for it to the American people, to the Christian world, to history, and on my final account to God. Having determined to use the Negro as a soldier, there is no way but to give him all the protection given to any other soldier. The difficulty is not in stating the principle, but in practically applying it. It is a mistake to suppose the government is indifferent to this matter, or is not doing the best it can in regard to it. If there has been the massacre of 300 there, or even the 10th part of 300, the retribution shall as surely come.
May 3rd, 1864.
The long-awaited battle between Generals Lee and Grant commenced 8 days ago in the Virginia wilderness, when the Army of the Potomac crossed the Rappahannock. Since then, the struggle has been carried on with a fierceness and desperation unprecedented in the conflict thus far, if that can be believed after the carnage witnessed at Shiloh, Antietam, and Gettysburg. It is difficult to determine which side has been the most successful, though it is plainly evident that the Union has suffered the greater casualties.
Citizens across the North crowd newspaper and telegraph offices for any word on the contest. When General Grant declared in a dispatch to Washington, quote, I propose to fight it out on this line if it takes all summer, end quote, it made instant headlines. Everyone seems to think that Grant will enter Richmond and end the war before the autumn leaves begin to fall.
May 24th, 1864.
The people are too sanguine. They expect too much at once. There is a great deal still to be done.
In the past, when Union generals lost a battle to General Lee, they retreated to regroup and fight another day. Not so for General Grant. 3 times his army was beaten by Lee's, yet he did not retreat. Instead, he moved south, always south toward Richmond around Lee's right flank.
June 30th, 1864.
Today, Maryland's Constitutional Convention voted to abolish slavery. However, this favorable news to the Lincoln administration is overshadowed by the implausible loss of life and limb in the incessant fighting ongoing in Virginia between the 2 armies under Generals Lee and Grant. In just 6 weeks at the Wilderness, Spotsylvania, and Cold Harbor, General Grant has lost nearly 2/3 of the accumulated loss sustained during the past 3 years. Jackie, How is the Lincoln administration responding to these staggering casualty reports?
Carter, the news is difficult for anyone to reconcile. Secretary Seward perhaps said it best, quote, "It seems like exaggeration that in describing conflict after conflict in this energetic campaign, I am required always to say of the last one that it was the severest battle of the war," end quote. Unfortunately, the news is not any better for General William T. Sherman, who, after moving swiftly through northern Georgia in May, has met resistance on the outskirts of Atlanta. Even Lincoln's allies are wilting with weariness. Horace Greeley, editor of the New York Tribune, wrote to the president, quote, "Our bleeding, bankrupt, almost dying country longs for peace, shudders at the prospect of fresh conscriptions, of further wholesale devastations, and of new rivers of human blood," end quote.
July 17th, 1864.
Under a flag of truce, two Northerners met with President Jefferson Davis and Judah Benjamin in Richmond today to discuss the possibility of peace and reconciliation.
I desire peace as much as you do. I deplore bloodshed as much as you do, but I feel that not one drop of the bloodshed in this war is in my hands, and I look up to my God and say this. I tried all in my power to avert this war. I saw it coming, and for 12 years I worked night and day to prevent it. But I could not. We are not fighting for slavery. We are fighting for independence, and that or extermination we will have. If your papers tell the truth, it is your capital that is in danger, not ours. Some weeks ago, Grant crossed the Rapidan to whip Lee and take Richmond. And what is the net result? Grant has lost 75 or 80,000 men, more than Lee had at the outset, and is no nearer to Richmond than at first. And Lee, whose front has never been broken, holds him completely in check and has men enough to spare to invade Maryland and threaten Washington. Sherman, to be sure, is before Atlanta. But suppose he is, and suppose he takes it. You know that the further he goes from his base of supplies, the weaker he grows and the more disastrous defeat will be to him. And defeat may come. So in a military view, I should certainly say our position was better than yours. But if we were without money, without food, without weapons, if our whole country were devastated and our armies crushed and disbanded, could we, without giving up our manhood, give up our right to govern ourselves? Would you not rather die and feel yourself a man than live and be subject to a foreign power? We seceded to rid ourselves of the rule of the majority, and this would subject us to it again. Amnesty, sir, applies to criminals. We have committed no crime. You have emancipated nearly 2 million of our slaves, and if you'll take care of them, you may emancipate the rest. I had a few when the war began. I was of some use to them. They never were of any to me. Against their will, you emancipated them, and you may emancipate every Negro in the Confederacy. But we will be free. We will govern ourselves. We will do it if we have to see every Southern plantation sacked and every Southern city in flames. Say to Mr. Lincoln from me that I shall at any time be pleased to receive proposals for peace on the basis of our independence. It will be useless to approach me with any other.